So we kind of looked around and there wasn't anything going in Christchurch, so we thought, hey, let's start something. A lot of the other guys, not me at the moment, have been working on some build packages, so before you know, we could share some of our knowledge, and then after the next few months, maybe hear from you guys as well, if anyone's keen to talk at some point. Bit of housekeeping, toilets are around the corner to the right. If you want more feature or beer, help yourself. Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the only exit is
You can get up there as well in an emergency.
to the dark.
Yeah, straight into the guts.
Yeah.
It's straight into the heart.
Big thanks to Web Tools for letting us use this space. They sponsored the meeting tonight. Also, massive thanks to Plus ID for playing during work time. And for sponsoring the beer. And big thanks to Bennett for helping me set up all the live streaming and useful equipment. Yeah, I'd be totally lost if you hadn't shown me how to stream to YouTube and Twitch. Cool. All right, so tonight we have Craig, my colleague who Plus ID presenting. He's going to talk to us about building API super fast with Laravel. In the spare time, you will find him lifting crazy weights. And he's got a lot of protein. Take it away from him.
Thanks. Get rid of those photos, which I hate. All right. Just bear with me. I'm not the best presenter out here, so I will do my utmost. As Josh says, and you probably can hear, I'm originally from South Africa, been here for 8 years, loving it, not going back. Today, I want to go over an API controller package that I started developing a while back and that we've adopted at the company. It literally streamlines half of the API work, makes it quick and easy to set up CRUD API endpoints and get going. To start with, before I get into that, don't know what everybody's level of Laravel is, so I'm going to do a really quick primer on Laravel and what it is, and go from there. Laravel is a PHP framework developed for productivity. It's done by Taylor Otwell. It's very opinionated and set up to save time. I mean, yeah, mic's on. I did forget the other one though. Sorry, let me switch that on before I get. Yeah. All right. Sorry. Yeah. So the framework incorporates many things to streamline your work, managing your queues, authentication out of the box, real time, and as we're all seeing now with Octane coming out, it's looks like it's going to go really fast and really hard. We're dealing with RESTful APIs in today's package, which is your get, post, put, delete. And from there, let's just jump in. Obviously, you'd set up your Laravel, set up your authentication, and you'd end up with your, excuse the doxel, your app structure, app resources, etc. The package you'd install can be found on GitLab under PHPSA Laravel API controller. It's a quick and simple installation. That will literally plug everything in, get it going. Documentation, which is still under progress, but has been evolving, goes through what it can offer, the installations. So the installation, again, sorry, here. So it's a composer installation, publishing your configuration file if you want to. As a single middleware that is added to the global API middlewares. Your configuration, just pretty much you can set where your controllers, your routes, models. The models is obviously for all the Laravel compatibility between 5, 6, 7, and 8. This package was started on Laravel 5, so it is compatible from 5 all the way through. Routes and the parameters, which I will cover shortly in there. Usage. Simple, once it's installed, you set up an API, and instead of running through the whole thing, I'll just show a screenshot of it there. So you'll say make API to do controller. It'll ask you which model, guessing based on the controller name. And you can say if you want a custom request resources and collections, which used to be called transformers in the older versions. Confirms if the model exists. If it doesn't, asks if you want to create it. Your factories, your seeders, your migrations, policies, even your unit test stub is set up there. Once you're done there, you literally end up with that set of routes. So API to-dos, the get, the post, the single to-do get, single post for the put to update, and your delete. So those actions immediately are fully functional, and you can literally run get, install, get updates, etc. Filtering is built in. You don't need to go and write a query engine. You literally add on your query string for your gets, filter which field equals which value. So it then deals with your equals, not equals, greater than, less than, all of, as you can see there. Array based with ins and not ins. Recently added the ability to filter on a column being null or not null as well. Where it does come in quite nicely is scopes. Oops. It does know how to deal with Laravel scopes, so you can write your scopes and add them to your API without doing anything other than adding it to your allowed scopes array within the API resource. Filtering, as we saw, include relationships. You can literally say include, well, filtering on your related and including your related through the include and filter relation.field. So the documentation is in place that covers 90% of what we need. And I'm pretty sure you'd rather see the code than me rattling on about that. So that being said, as a quick example, I set up, sorry, on the wrong branch there. Sorry, trying to find all my controllers. No wonder I'm in the wrong project, sorry about that. There we go. Okay, so category controller. Controller by default comes with a key for your resource, as we said earlier, which I will cover a little bit more on. You can set your default sorting, your default limit, a maximum limit, so you can stop people from requesting all, or you can allow them to select all. The default index endpoint, which handles the index action, your store with the custom request for your validation, show, update, destroy. And then the magic comes in. We've got a protected method that tells it which model we are dealing with. Models, quite literally, are standard models, as you can see. I've got a soft delete, normal trait, my fillables, and my relationships. There's nothing you need to do on the models that's any different. And from that, you literally get, let me just again, blog category, so index, including the posts from a category. It wasn't on that one, sorry, yeah. The singular endpoint to show. I've added 2 scopes in the category, just as an example there, or 2 relations, sorry, posts, and all posts, which includes the unpublished. So you're not limited, you can add your scopes to say with your deleted items, with your globals, local scopes, etc. Store accepts a JSON body. Is that the right one? Yeah. This is a test. It does deal with the validation, so straight off the bat, again, all core Laravel. I have tried with as much of the code to use core Laravel facilities or bits so as not to override, so as not to force a whole new subset of learning on top of the package. You literally, over 90% of it is just core Laravel, read it and go. So yeah, is everybody with me up to this point? And then, yeah, so the proof is more, as they say, is normally in the pudding. And I can show you all of that I've prepped a couple of hours ago, and that doesn't help, but let's go. Make API controller, sorry. So as you say, command, we use Doxel, hence the fin. So for the contact model, yeah, we want a custom request, custom resource. Yeah. Okay. For some reason, my migrations always take forever. There must be something. Seeders, policies, feature test. Yeah. Straight off that bat, got our contact controller, mapped to our resources, mapped to our contact request, which again, standard Laravel. Don't know why they make it false, but they do. So contact requires what? A name, an email, and we'll stick to that for that. Contact request, resources, yeah, a resource, a singular resource, which, as I say, in the old times used to be called transformers. From Laravel 5, I think it is, they introduced the API, the JSON resource. My API resource simply extends the JSON resource, which adds in two little handy tools that front-end developers would love. I don't know how many of you have issues with snake case versus camel case in front-end and back-end. The middleware that we add, which is optional, but we pretty much put in all our projects, converts all incoming requests from camel to snake. So your JavaScript developers can literally use a camel case and push through a whole post body in camel, and you got snake case. Same thing, the JavaScript developer has now got the power to say, I want snake or camel, by simply passing the except case header. So no more, I wanted camels. Yeah. So that's one of the magic things that happens within the API resource that's a little bit different. The other side of it is the allowable fields and the resource mapping. So mapping of a resource, if I use the category resource as an example, the posts, the included posts will use the post resource and map through those. And there you've got default fields, contact request, contact resource. We've got no resources. By default, in our admin screen, for instance, we just want the ID, name, email. So if you do not, if you call the API endpoint and you don't say which fields you want in the request, these are the fields that will come back by default. If, for instance, you wanted to really be really strict with the fields and say they're only allowed to see the ID and the name and email should never be in, you can set up the allowed fields. Any field that's requested that's not in allowed fields will not be returned by the API either. Obviously, leaving it empty says, yes, I want anything. Allowed scopes, this is where, because scopes are dangerous in a lot of ways, and internal logic, you sometimes do not want to open many of them, decided that scopes have to be whitelisted in. So scope with user for argument's sake. which it doesn't exist, but you literally tell it which scopes you want in. It's actually, sorry, a string, not a direct reference. I think either works. You'll tell it which scopes you want allowed. You can then use minus the keyword scope, the with user in your query string, and that'll pass your parameters to that scope for you through the API. Then the to array, which is a standard to array, you could strip it out or it can keep it. Our to array maps it through the only allowed, mapping your fields and formatting for the lovely JavaScript responses. The collection quite literally extends the API collection, which extends the resource collection. It doesn't do anything magical other than help map these two together a lot better. Models, as said, contact model. Again, you'd just go and set it up yourself. And we'll obviously have timestamps, and which I tend to really enjoy the use of. Policies. Laravel's policies are one of the nicest things that I've played with in a while. It handles your authorization on each endpoint, and the API plugs directly into it. So you've got your view any. This maps to the view any method on the controller, which is the index, and obviously returning a true will allow them to view them. Returning a false will throw an unauthorized error. For instance, view any, we really want, only admins are allowed as role admin. Alternatively, we use Spatty's roles and permissions, which then means I can actually set user can view contacts or contact requests, for argument's sake. And I can set up that permission in the Spatty permissions package. And that is quite literally dealing with authorization. The view any will be called right in the beginning. The view, same story with the context so that you can do ownership mapping. A view any with ownership mapping, you can use scopes, a global scope, or alternatively, there is a method in the policy that I'll show you in a few moments that modifies your requests. So all the update, delete, which is all up to force delete, standard core Laravel functionality can be read up on their pages, no issue. The package has added in the qualify collection query with user, which is on the get all endpoints. So you might decide it passes through obviously the current user and the builder instance. So you can go builder where user ID, the user ID for argument's sake. At this point, if only in the API you want to restrict it to the logged in user, you can obviously build all your logic in there. So there's the collection query, which deals with all the get all method, the qualify item query, which deals with a single query. The store method allows you to manipulate. This is called literally the one step before the insert. So all the data has been mapped, everything else has been done in the background already. So this is the data that will be inserted along with the relationship. So you can remap, add columns, remove columns magically at this point for the store and for the update. And that covers the policy, which, as I say, the only difference is the 4 new little methods. Models standardized, migration set up. Let's go table, soft deletes, string name, email. There's only 2 hours gathering. Seeders, standard Laravel seeders. You could set up to seed as I've done with my role seeder there. There's nothing different in it. The package is purely piggybacking off of that. Your roots file is the one place where you will have to fiddle a little bit. If we take, for instance, the context one. Whoops, how did I get doubled up? All right, so viewing all, well, let's go. The store method, we want public. The rest are protected. Uses the API resource, which is, again, believe it or not, pure Laravel. It exists, it just, and maps your index, destroy, show, update methods to the relevant methods. And so there, I've got this with just in the normal, well, actually in the wrong place, but I'm not going to move it now. Let's just say it's in my blog, has got a contact area. So blog contacts, and then behind the auth middleware, oops, behave machine, would be there. Again, you can use your own authentication. It's not hard-coded that you have to use the auth middleware. Yeah, you can use the request authorize method. You can use any middleware or any authentication protocol that you prefer in Laravel, because we've tried to keep it literally as extendable as possible. So, artisan migrate, fin artisan. I was worried that would look like that. But API blog. There's new endpoints straight out the bat. One of the other little tools that I've got that's not part of this discussion, but I'll just point out, is the Postman Export. I don't know how many of you use Postman when you're developing, but this package here will literally export all your API routes into a Postman file that you can import by literally that command. Yeah. Import. So copy to. It comes through by default from there with your endpoint, and we want the contact in this one. Get rid of that. Okay. So by default, as you can see, it's already got the mapping for the destroy, ready for your parameter. The headers are set up. Your update, headers are set up. Your body reads from the model. The fillable fields. There is a method that allows you to map those fields, and you can return an array that says key and says, I want this in this. So you can actually document your post body from that endpoint, from the model as a separate method, which means your exporting of documentation should be a lot quicker. But let's go. So store, authorization, no auth. Right, I've set up mine here just so that it's transparent, if my keyboard will work. In my pre-request script, because I'm using Sanctum, I'm getting the CSFR cookie, setting it, and putting it in there, which took me a while to figure out, because Sanctum needs the cookie and or their token in it when it's working. Authorization is then done via that cookie collection in Sanctum. Hence, don't know if this no auth actually works there, but I have tested it. So body, name, Tom Jones, send. Would help if I typed an email. And set up my policy, finished. it's a good proof of the policy in action. So create, again, we want public users to be able to. Again, it's more restrictive right off the bat, just to prevent an accidental security loophole. There we go. I'm really bad with guessing names. Okay. So someone else, make sure the policy get all. Let's just stick to a standard admin role. So index. Oh, would help if I took out some of the bits that we're not using. Send all. There's all of them. So question filter name equals Tom. Straight away filtering. Yeah, so update. Get rid of that again. Let's say Tom misspelled his name. It should be Thomas. Params, we're editing contact 1. Send. Yeah. That's the part I didn't do again. One of the things I'm busy building in beta testing at the moment is the ability for this rules to now become a put post rule set. It will be a trait that you can just plug in, and then you will have a index rules, common rules, and put rules. For now, quest. And now I've forgotten my own command here. Let me just grab that out, sorry. Method rules. Yeah. So the newer version would be use method rules. Now method rules behind the scenes, make sure you're on a route and gets the current route action method followed by rules. And obviously there's a common rules which overrides the current rules method. So you could have common rules and then public function. Sorry. It is update here. Update rules. Return name. It can actually be either or. Arrays are better, I agree. I'm just lazy typing right now. No, didn't help, did it? And contact policy. Update. Return $user as role. That's interesting. Would help if I had valid JSON. There we go. All right. So there we go. Quite literally, we've built a page that accepts the contact requests from the front end, a screen that can list them, show them, and search them, all without actually really getting too dirty on your code. And that's pretty much where you can call it and start answering any questions anybody might have.
Do you mind creating the camel snake base middleware as a separate package or totally use that?
I could do that, yeah. Yeah, that's. Radabi's production ready. We've got 5 or 6 live systems running on it at the moment. Yeah, internally we've got 5 or 6. I know there's I've done support on with about 7 or 8 different people that are using it externally as well. I've had a couple of pull requests from other developers that have come in. So the package is fully open source. The source code is there. I do accept pull requests and suggestions. It is actively maintained by myself and most of the people at CustomD who are using it. If they find something that's lacking, they will dig in and do it. So it is quite actively developed as we're going. I have got 6 or 7 bits of functionality that I'm trying to build in at the moment and test, including that request piece, batch actions as well, so batch delete, batch insert. Yeah. Anything else? Relationships. Okay. Quick example. Oops. Relationships, standardized models. All right, so let's close that. All right, so standard model relationships set up. And there's actually proof that where the unpublished came in earlier that I was going on. I actually had a global scope set up here for making sure we only got published posts. But yeah, relationships. So user belongs to the user class using standard Laravel, belongs to in the category model. Posts is a has many. That being said, within there, blog. So blog post index. To include your relationships is a include header saying which relationships you want. These can be blacklisted as well or whitelisted. It by default is an allow all relationships, but there is a setting includes whitelist and includes blacklist, which works on if you put anything in includes whitelist, only those are allowed. If you put anything in includes blacklist, those are blacklisted. If they're both empty, everything's allowed, obviously. Okay, so that there, by passing that through, I get my user and my category. These are wrapped through the transformers, and without it, obviously there. And even if somebody tries to be funny and say, images for argument's sake and we haven't mapped it, it just ignores it. Same with if you do an insert and pass through a couple of fields that it doesn't recognize, it'll just ignore them. So that is the has one relation. Blog categories index with posts will return an array of the posts within the category. Storing. Oops. You can quite literally pass through. I'll fix that now. Typing PHP in the code. You can pass it through like that. The other alternative is, in this case, would be user ID 1, both which are valid. If you want to insert a new user at that point, you could do that, and that will obviously with the rest of the validation. Insert the user, post, oh, where was it? That was number 4. That's categories, blog post show with unpublished. So as I say, there's an example of the unpublished scope in use. I wanted post 4. Something went wrong there. It only deals with one tier at the moment. Oh, the has many would work, as does the has many through, but it's not fully developed. I am busy working on that at the moment. They're guessing between should I be creating or is it a new record is giving me a bit of uphill at the moment, but it is in the pipeline. Only the Postman one at the moment, which I'll quickly see if I've done this one's documentation. I've just started setting up new documentation for my packages, which as you can see, not very far yet. But the GitHub repo does have the documentation there. So using this package, and Postman can export to Open API as well, which is why I focused on this. This makes it a lot easier internally. So yeah, version 2 means you don't need to do this in the controller, but you could plug this into any controller that isn't the API as well by adding this to your Postman model parameter to your controller to map to the class or the model, and in the model get Postman params, which accepts the method and the root name, so you can actually configure what the example body is. Documentation on each of the endpoints that uses standard doc block notation to generate that, and it'll grab that documentation and put it into Postman for you. And root name is the only custom one there, which when you set root name, it'll set that name there. The description goes in there. But yeah, it is pretty compatible with, there is a open API package as well on the market, which all you need to do is document, again, in the controller around the endpoints, and it'll pick it up as well, quite well. Sorry? Ah, yeah. That, again, unfortunately, is quite literally only standard Laravel boilerplate test class for you to deal with. I wasn't going to try and guess how people like to test. Our first set of tests, or our first thought of testing, ended up making a test run for what, half an hour? And we've been streamlining that as we go, but there is just too many ways of testing, and every company's got their own way, so it's not something I want to try and dictate again in the package. My main focus is not to dictate how you should develop your code, just give you a tool to make it quicker. Yeah, Laravel stubs can be overwritten. If you put a, in your folder structure, if you put a stubs folder, if it will behave. So big it won't move. Okay. If you put a stubs folder in your root, and you copy the stub in, you can then customize the stub to how you want to read it. Not too sure if Laravel 8's got it, or if it was a package that I used. Let me just double check. I think yeah. You can there, fin artisan stub publish. and there's the stubs, and this will include all the stubs that it knows about. So you can literally, in your test there, in the test stub, go and map up your basic rules, and when you publish it, so quite literally, because it's there, fin art artisan make test as you can see, it's used the new stubs. You could do the same with the API controllers, because those stubs do sit in that stubs folder. Not that one. Oh, it should be. Might not actually publish the non-public ones. You can put the API's controller ones in there and override them. So if you decide you wanted a magic method that you created yourself that would go on each one, you could put it in there yourself and wouldn't have to override anything in the library. Anybody got anything else? They both, yeah, they both pretty much do the same thing. Obviously, a lot of it depends on your coding standards and styles as well, but like the request, you'd have to make sure the request was passed in. So it would only be passed in at that point and single use. A policy, however, can be adapted to be used internally as well. You can then say user can view any passing the model anywhere else in the code, and it will use that policy as well. So it's a little bit more reusable. And I think it's also just a little bit easier to control, because then you've got one place, the different methods, where you can actually set up different pieces of logic, where the authorized method is one method, which means you've got to write a bit of code to tell it, well, am I dealing with this? Am I dealing with this? This is what I should do. Yeah.
General idea is that the authorized method and the request should be used for validation the request for authorizing your right to make the request, but the policy should be used for your right to modify that particular record or that particular thing.
Again, another option would be use a middleware, which would do exactly the same. That is, I think, one of the things I really like about Laravel is that you might not agree with us that a policy is the best route, and you might prefer to use a middleware. There's nothing that stops it. You just do not publish that policy file, and it will ignore it and skip it completely. So, yeah, everything here is loosely coupled. So, yeah, if you do not have a resource, if you don't want to use the resources, you can plug in your own transformers and use them. If you want to use a different style of request objects, go for it. It's not, the only thing it would need to be within the request object is obviously extending the Laravel request so that I can use, the package can use the all method and the mapping methods that are within there. But beyond that, you could literally take it away from Eloquent and plug it into another database engine, and it would still work.
Do you guys have a front-end team that you consider API?
Yeah.
What's their common complaints, I guess? Like, where have they run into trouble when consuming this? What is loving it?
Oh, there's always a complaint. Hence, snake case, camel case.
Yeah. Can we have a scope for this?
Yeah. It's more, they don't like writing filtering rules a lot of the time. Yeah, they expect certain things to be a little bit easier to them, but yeah. I think it's about it. It's that in the relationships. I think relationships still kill them.
It's the
It's no more. We used to have a similar system back in Code Igniter days. It did a lot of the guesswork for us as well, and I liked the concept. So when I started playing with Laravel and noticed it wasn't there, I started building it. However, I think version 1.2 went completely out of scope and added a lot more, which is when we adapted it in Office. Before that, it was just a personal pet project that I was playing with.
Part of the reasoning for us is, around consistency. Like, we don't have to read documentation every time we want to get a particular type of data or a particular filter. All our API endpoints work the same way. Yeah, really split. So if you had to do like a database rename and that kind of stuff, you just do a global search and just change its reference like you do now.
Well,
Smart ways to
yeah. Oh.
I'm just trying to think if I was adopting this, what would be the common things I would
Yeah. Well,
keep an eye out for, what would change and what wouldn't change.
Yeah. Well, mostly, I mean, you say a database name change, so category.
Well, sorry, like a column change or any refactoring in general.
Any refactoring you should be limited to, if it's a database change, just working within your model and maybe the response object. Your controllers and the rest should pretty much never need to be touched in a refactor unless you're changing massive logic or permission sets.
I mean, you can do a lot of this with pure Laravel. Like if you're refactoring a database, you can just change your resource to enhance the cross-building stuff.
Yeah.
If there's some complex logic, you can still jump in on the controller and do what you normally do before you get it. Because I think in your controllers, can you show that again?
Yeah, I should probably dig down into the controller a little bit more to make it a bit easier there as well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So. Okay. Yeah. So I'll dig into the bones of it quickly. I didn't even go over that one. One of the problems with Laravel, before I jump a little bit further, is if you're dealing with a lot of data and Eloquent, it can get quite slow or resource heavy. It was that one package where we ended up, almost 2 minutes waiting for a response because of Eloquent. Due to that, I added a raw method. So you just swap out handle index action to handle index and raw. It uses the Eloquent query builder, but trashes Eloquent before the query runs. And that query came back, sub 10 seconds again. They both do exactly the same thing, it just bypasses Eloquent there. Yeah, it suddenly was responsive again. But yeah, so yeah, the index action, it's got a couple of comments, validates the request, add custom params, again, something I didn't go through. You can, on your controller, pass through the request if you want to, or it guesses it. But if you want to, you'd pass through the request, and you could pass through an array here of special scopes or filters instead of having them in the URL. So by default, filters in here, and that'll always be appended to your query, which is done in the custom params section there. It merges those with the old ones. Then, as you can see, we authorize the user action, which checks the existence of the policy and queries the policy. Then a couple of common actions. Oh, I must actually fix that. It's validating the request twice.
It's actually a good point. So, because as a developer, I can see myself being an idiot. When it wants to get a testing to the function, but yeah, it all works. And it comes back and like, oh, actually, that endpoint broken up on something. But I guess I just write feature test, basic feature test to make sure everything.
Yeah.
That would be a way to do it.
Yeah. Pretty much, we've got, the way I'm setting up my tests now is I've got a test that tests the policies independently, and then the controllers as well, if I've got anything special that needs to be triggered. Yeah, but pretty much.
Yeah, the basic controllers, there's no real need to test anything going manually underneath it.
Yeah.
Because there's other package
The package has got a whole bunch of unit tests, and I am adding new tests every time I do any adjustments. So yeah, you can bypass these methods in the controller, obviously.
Sorry, for the controller again, so the controller actions and the controller itself, not this one, the contact controller. So would you ever, like, after you've got that handle index action data, wherever it's come back from that, would there be a scenario where you want to edit it afterwards, or would you just kind of leave the controller as it is like that? Like, just play with the data a bit,
Oh, that's where your transformer would generally work. Yeah, there has been a case or two where we found that the transformer doesn't do what we want, and we actually need to work with it just before we send it from within the controller. And to that effect, there is a handle index response method that literally just does this at the moment, which you can then override. And it'll have whatever the response object is already ready formatted. So all you need to do is fiddle with it, or I think it was in your project where we set it up to trigger a couple of events at that point, where we needed some specialized events, but they had to be done after the insertion at a certain point. So yeah, most of the bits, as I say, are overridable. So if you don't like the way my response works, you can override the response method. So nothing is final, nothing is, yeah, I've got no final classes, I've got no non-extendable methods. It's pretty much, yeah, and everything's broken down, so if you want to dig in the code, the response stuff is in a single trait. Yeah, wrong place again. Yeah. So as you can see, that has includes, has model, has parser, everything. The query parser sits in its own file, the models, everything is there. So you could literally just implement it, copy that trait over, make your modifications, and implement it in a base controller that you then extend in your own controllers, and just override those few pieces that you need to.